When Freddie Mercury walked onto the stage at Munich's Olympia Halle on June 12, 1986, he had no idea that in the next 48 minutes he would make a decision that would shock 12 Weisuren fans and redefine what it meant to stand for something bigger than music. What none of the screaming crowd knew was that within 2 weeks, Freddie would return to that same city to do something that had never been done in rock history. And it all started when he looked up at Section C, Row 22, and saw something that made his blood run cold. The Magic Tour was at its peak. Queen had just released A Kind of Magic, and every venue across Europe was selling out within hours. Munich, a city that had always welcomed Queen with open arms, was no exception. The Olympia Halle, built for the 1972 Olympics, could hold exactly 1,250 people when configured for concerts, and every single seat was filled that Thursday evening. The air smelled of cigarette smoke, spilled beer, and the electric anticipation of thousands waiting for their heroes. Among those 1,250 fans was Jacob Friedman, 67 years old, a retired schoolteacher who lived in a modest apartment in the Schwabing district. Jacob had been teaching history for 42 years before he retired in 1984, specializing in World War II and the Holocaust. Every day for 4 decades, he had stood in front of classrooms full of German children and told them the truth about what had happened. He showed them photographs. He read them testimonies. He made sure they understood that never again meant something. Jakob had survived Auschwitz. He was 13 years old when he arrived there in 1943. His entire family, 7 people, had entered those gates. Only Jakob walked out 3 years later, weighing 78 pounds, with a number tattooed on his left forearm that he would carry for the rest of his life. For 43 years after liberation, Jakob had lived with nightmares. But he also lived with music. In the darkness of the camp, the prisoners had sometimes sung to keep their spirits alive, soft melodies that reminded them they were still human. After the war, music became Jakob's refuge. He saved money for months to buy tickets to Queen's Munich concert. His granddaughter Sarah, 19 years old and studying at Ludwig Maximilian University, had convinced him. "Grandpa," she had said, "you deserve one night of pure joy." They had arrived at the Olympia Halle 3 hours early, at 4:30 p.m., standing in a line that wrapped around the building twice. Sarah held her grandfather's hand the entire time, feeling how his fingers trembled slightly. Not from fear, from excitement. At his age, after everything he had survived, Jacob Friedman was about to see Queen live. Section C, Row 22, seats 14 and 15. They were perfect seats, close enough to see everything but not so close that the sound would be overwhelming for Jakob's aging ears. Sarah had checked the sightlines 3 times before purchasing the tickets. She wanted everything to be perfect for him. What neither of them saw in the chaos of 12 Weisuren people finding their seats was the group of 6 young men, all in their early 20s, who took their places in row 23, directly behind Jakob and Sarah. They wore black leather jackets, they had shaved heads, and when they sat down, laughing and shoving each other, one of them pulled out a banner. It was approximately 4 feet wide and 2 feet tall, made of white fabric with a symbol painted in black, a swastika. Below it, in German, the words Deutschland erwache, Germany awake, a Nazi slogan from the 1930s. The concert began at 7:00 p.m. sharp. The lights went down. The crowd erupted. Freddie Mercury appeared in a white tank top and white jeans, his voice filling every corner of that massive space. One vision opened the show, and for those first 12 minutes, everything was magic. The band moved through Tie Your Mother Down, and the energy was electric. 12,000 people singing, dancing, lost in the music. Then came In the Lap of the Gods. Freddie was mid-verse, his voice soaring when he paused. Just for a second. His eyes scanned the crowd, the way they always did, making eye contact, connecting. And then he saw it. Section C, row 23. The banner was now raised, held high by two of the young men, waving it back and forth like a flag. The swastika catching the stage lights, impossible to miss. Freddie's voice cracked on the next word. He stopped singing completely. The band, confused, kept playing for another 3 bars before they realized something was wrong. Brian May looked over at Freddie. Roger Taylor stood up from his drums, concerned. John Deacon lowered his bass. The music died. 12,000 people fell into absolute silence. You could hear individual voices now, someone coughing, someone whispering. "What's happening?" Freddie walked to the front of the stage. He raised one hand to shield his eyes from the lights, squinting out into the crowd. His breathing was visible, his chest rising and falling. When he spoke, his voice wasn't the showman's voice the crowd was used to. It was quiet, controlled, but shaking with something deeper than anger. "Stop the show." Peter Hintz, Queen's chief roadie for 14 years, later said he had never heard Freddie say those words before. Not in hundreds of concerts across dozens of countries. Freddie never stopped shows. "Bring the house lights up," Freddie said into the microphone. "All of them. Now." The darkness flooded with light. 12,000 people blinked, confused, exposed. The magic of the concert disappeared, replaced by the harsh reality of overhead fluorescence. Everyone could see everyone now, including the 6 young men in row 23, still holding their banner, no longer anonymous in the dark. Freddie pointed, his arm extended, his finger aimed directly at them. "You," he said. "You with the flag. Do you know where you are? Do you know what that symbol means?" The young men froze. One of them, the tallest, tried to lower the banner, but Freddie's voice cut through the arena. "No. Keep it up. I want everyone to see what you brought into this place." Jacob Friedman sat in row 22, his granddaughter's hand gripping his so tightly her knuckles were white. He was staring straight ahead at the stage, not turning around, not wanting to look at the symbol behind him. Sarah felt her grandfather trembling now, not with excitement but with something else entirely. "This is Munich," Freddie continued, his voice growing stronger. "This city knows what that symbol did. This country knows. And you bring it here? To a concert? To a place where people came to forget their pain and feel something beautiful." The 6 young men started pushing their way toward the aisle, trying to leave. Security was already moving in, but Freddie held up his hand. "Let them go," he said. "But not with that." He pointed at the banner. "That stays here. Give it to security. Leave it in Munich, where it belongs. In the past." The tallest one threw the banner at a security guard's feet. They disappeared up the stairs, the crowd watching them go in complete silence. When they were gone, when the exit doors closed behind them, Freddie turned back to the microphone. He stood there for a long moment, just breathing. 12,000 people waited. Then he spoke again, and this time his voice was different. Softer. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know you came here for music, for joy, and I promise you'll have that. But I can't sing in the same space as that hatred. I won't." He looked at Brian May. "Give me 5 minutes," he said, not into the microphone, just to his bandmate. But in the perfect acoustics of the Olympia Halle, 12,000 people heard it anyway. Freddie walked off stage. The band followed. The crowd sat in shocked silence, the house lights still blazing, nobody knowing what would happen next. Backstage, in the small dressing room with its concrete walls and harsh lighting, Freddie paced. His hands were shaking. Roger Taylor had never seen him like this. "Fred," he said carefully, "we can keep going. They're gone. It's over." "No," Freddie said. His voice was hoarse. "It's not over. Not until I know why. Not until I understand who was hurt out there." He turned to Peter Hintz. "Find them," he said. "Find whoever that symbol hurt tonight. Find them and bring them to me. Please." Peter Hintz didn't question it. He had worked with Freddie long enough to understand that when Freddie asked for something like this, it mattered. He went to the house manager, explained the situation, and within 10 minutes security was moving through Section C. They found Jakob and Sarah still in their seats. Jakob's hands were covering his face. Sarah was crying, her arm around her grandfather's shoulders. When security approached and explained that Freddie Mercury wanted to speak with them, Jakob looked up. His eyes were wet. "Why?" he asked in German-accented English. "Why me?" "Because," the security guard said gently, "he stopped the show for you." They brought Jakob and Sarah backstage. Freddie was waiting in the hallway, still in his white tank top, now with a towel around his neck. When he saw the elderly man, saw the number tattooed on his forearm that Jakob had never tried to hide, Freddie's face changed. He understood instantly. "Sir," Freddie said, stepping forward, "I am so sorry. I am so sorry you had to see that. I am so sorry I didn't see it sooner." Jakob stared at this man, this rock star who had just stopped a concert for him, and he started to cry. Not quiet tears. Deep, body-shaking sobs. Freddie moved forward and wrapped his arms around Jakob, this stranger, this survivor, and held him while he cried. "You stopped," Jakob said in English, his voice muffled against Freddie's shoulder. "You saw it and you stopped everything." "Of course I stopped," Freddie said. "How could I keep singing? How could any of us keep singing with that in the room?" Sarah stood against the wall, tears streaming down her face, watching her grandfather be held by Freddie Mercury like he was the most important person in the world. "How old were you?" Freddie asked quietly. 13, Jakob said. "When I arrived. 16 when I left. I was the only one." Freddie pulled back, looked Jakob in the eyes. "You are here," he said. "You survived. You are here listening to music. That's the victory. You are the victory." Jakob nodded, wiping his eyes. "My granddaughter," he said, gesturing to Sarah. "She loves your music. She wanted me to have one night of joy." Freddie looked at Sarah. "You will," he said. "Both of you will. But not tonight. Tonight is over. Tonight was poisoned by those people. But I want you to come back. 2 weeks from now, same venue. We'll have a special show. Just for this city. To prove that love is stronger than hate. And you'll be my guests. Front row. I promise you joy. Real joy. Will you come?" Jakob looked at his granddaughter. She was nodding, unable to speak. He turned back to Freddie. "Yes," he said. "We will come." Freddie returned to the stage 17 minutes after he had left. The crowd erupted when they saw him, not sure what to expect. He walked to the microphone, waited for quiet. "We're going to finish this show," he said. "But it will be different now, because tonight we learned something. We learned that music is not just entertainment. It's resistance. It's rebellion against everything that tries to make us forget our humanity. So this is for everyone out there who knows what it means to survive. This is for everyone who refuses to let hate win." And then they played "We Are the Champions." But it wasn't the usual version. Freddie changed the lyrics, improvised, made it about survival, about dignity, about refusing to bow to darkness. The crowd sang with him, all 12 Erosrauden voices united in something that transcended the usual concert experience. They had all witnessed something together. They had all been changed by it. When the show ended at 10:43 p.m., 3 hours and 43 minutes after it began, with 2 17-minute pauses, the crowd didn't want to leave. They stayed in their seats, applauding, some of them crying, understanding that they had been part of something unprecedented. But here's the part that nobody expected. The part that changed everything. 2 weeks later, on June 26, 1986, Queen returned to Munich. But it wasn't announced as a Queen concert. There were no tickets sold. Instead, Freddie Mercury, using his own money, rented the Olympia Halle for one night. He invited Holocaust survivors from all over Germany. Free transportation, free accommodation, free everything. He invited Jakob and Sarah, of course, front row center as promised. But he also invited 847 other survivors who responded to the invitation sent through Jewish community centers across the country. 3,000 seats were reserved exclusively for survivors and their families. The remaining 9,000 tickets were sold, with all proceeds, every single Deutsche Mark, going to the Anne Frank Foundation and the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which was under construction in Washington, D.C. at the time. The concert began at 8:00 p.m. Freddie walked out in a simple black shirt, no costume, no theatrical entrance. He stood at the microphone and looked out at the survivors in the front rows. Some of them were in wheelchairs. Some had oxygen tanks. Some held hands with their grandchildren. All of them had survived the impossible. 2 weeks ago, Freddie said, something ugly happened in this venue. Something that had no place in a space dedicated to music and joy. Tonight, we reclaim this space. Tonight, we fill it with the opposite of that ugliness. Tonight is about memory, about resistance, about the absolute triumph of surviving. This entire show is for you. Every song, every note. This is your night. And then they played a set list unlike any Queen had ever performed. They played songs about freedom, about fighting, about refusing to surrender. Between songs, Freddie invited survivors to speak if they wanted to. 7 of them did, standing at microphones placed throughout the venue, sharing brief stories. Not about the horror, but about what came after. About children and grandchildren. About gardens planted and books written, and lives lived in defiance of those who tried to erase them. Jacob Friedman didn't speak. He couldn't. But when Freddie played Who Wants to Live Forever, Jacob stood in the front row with Sarah beside him, tears streaming down his face, singing every word. His voice, rough and old and beautiful, mixed with 3,000 other voices, all of them affirming that they were still here. They had won by surviving. The concert lasted 4 hours. When it ended, at midnight, Freddie didn't leave the stage. He stayed, shaking hands with every survivor who wanted to meet him. It took another 3 hours. He spoke with each one, asked their names, thanked them for coming. Some gave him things, small tokens. A photograph, a letter, a handwritten note. He accepted everything with both hands, with reverence. Jakob gave him something too. A small wooden box about 3 inches square. Inside was a harmonica, battered and old. This was mine, Jakob said. In the camp, the only thing I kept. Music saved me then. Music saved me again 2 weeks ago. I want you to have it, so you remember that what you do matters. Freddie took the box. He opened it, looked at the harmonica inside, and started to cry. Right there, in front of everyone. At 3:17 a.m. in an empty arena, he broke down. I can't take this, he said. This is yours. This is your survival. And now it's yours, Jakob said. My survival continues through you. Through what you did. Through this night. Take it. Freddie kept that harmonica for the rest of his life. In 1991, 5 years later, when he was dying, he asked for it. He held it in his hands during his final days. This instrument that had carried Jakob through Auschwitz, that had become a symbol of everything Freddie believed about the power of music to resist darkness. But the story doesn't end there. The Munich concert on June 26, 1986, raised 847,000 Deutsche Marks, equivalent to approximately $420 at the time. That money helped complete a major exhibit at the Holocaust Museum. But more importantly, it sparked something Freddie hadn't anticipated. After news of the concert spread, other artists started doing the same thing. Within 3 years, similar benefit concerts for Holocaust education and remembrance happened in 17 countries. Freddie never publicized what he did. He never talked about it in interviews. He didn't want credit. He just wanted to make things right. The harmonica that Jakob gave Freddie was donated to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993, 2 years after Freddie's death, per instructions in his will. It sits there now, in a small glass case, with a plaque explaining its journey, from Auschwitz to Munich, from survivor to rock star, from darkness to light. The exhibit has been visited by over 4 million people since it opened. Jakob Friedman died in 1994, at the age of 75. He was buried in Munich, wearing the concert T-shirt from June 26, 1986, the one Freddie had signed for him that night with the words, "For Jakob, who taught me what courage really means, Freddie Mercury." Sarah, his granddaughter, spoke at his funeral. She told the story of that night, of how her grandfather had experienced pure joy one more time before he died, of how a rock star had seen him, really seen him, and stopped everything to honor his pain. In 2001, the city of Munich installed a plaque outside the Olympia Halle. It's small, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. The inscription reads, "On June 12, 1986, Freddie Mercury stopped a concert to confront hatred. On June 26, 1986, he returned to replace it with love." Music is resistance. Memory is victory. The lesson of that night in Munich extends far beyond one concert, one band, one singer. It reminds us that when we see hatred, we have a choice. We can look away, we can rationalize, we can convince ourselves that it's not our problem, or we can stop everything. We can refuse to continue as if nothing happened. We can use whatever platform we have, whatever voice we've been given to say, "No, not here, not in my presence, not while I have breath in my lungs and a microphone in my hand." Freddie Mercury, a man who spent his life performing for millions, understood that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop performing. Stand still. Bear witness. Choose humanity over showmanship. Choose dignity over entertainment. Choose the one person suffering over the thousands who came to be distracted from their suffering. That's what made June 12, 1986, unprecedented. Not just that he stopped the show, but that he understood what came next. That the response to hatred isn't just rejection, it's replacement. You don't just remove the darkness. You flood the space with light so overwhelming that darkness can never return. If this powerful story of Freddie's courage and moral clarity moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that standing up for what's right matters, even when it costs you something. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone chose humanity over convenience, when they stopped everything to confront injustice? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible true stories about the heart behind music's greatest legends.